Hey beauties, welcome back to my channel. For today's video, I will be ranking all of my Charlotte Tilbury eyeshadow palettes. And I should preface this by saying that I only have 7, so it's not a wildly extensive collection. It's only been the past couple months that I've really taken interest in her eyeshadows again. I remember trying them once years ago, probably close to when the brand launched, and I wasn't that impressed. I didn't think the quality was there, especially for the price. At some point, I don't know when it was, but she definitely reformulated because her new palettes are amazing. Some of my favorites, some of the best out there. I'm really happy with all of these. There's just one that I'm somewhat on the fence about, and we will talk about that. But if you tried them in the past and you weren't happy, they're definitely worth revisiting. And if you haven't tried them at all, there are a couple palettes here that are well worth your time and your money. I'll be presenting these in order from least favorite all the way to my most favorite palette. So coming in at number 7, my least favorite, but not a bad eyeshadow palette, is the new Super Blue. I was so excited for this palette. There was so much hype around this palette. I remember visiting the stores before everything closed down and talking to, the counter manager, and she said, we're only gonna receive 5 or 6 palettes in store. It's gonna be the first one to go. And I was just so excited. I knew, okay, I definitely have to get one just to try it. I find this palette to be somewhat difficult, and I don't think it's a complete cohesive palette. Like some of the others on the list, all you need is the one palette and you can create multiple looks, incredibly versatile, great for travel. They do everything for you. I don't think that's the case with the Super Blue. It has nothing to do with the quality of the eyeshadows because I think they're really great. And if you wanted to do more easy everyday looks, you could stay right up top. You have this kind of buttercream shimmery eyeshadow and then this really pretty medium intensity brown kind of copper. So those two would be really nice for everyday, easy peasy looks. But if that's all you're gonna do with this palette, then it's really not worth your money. The point of this palette is to bring you blue. Since this is the pop shade or the celestial formula, it goes on a little bit more sheer. So I think it's kind of difficult to build it up to the point where you get that really intense shimmery blue that you might be expecting. I know I was scrolling through the Charlotte Tilbury Instagram, looking at all of the blue eyeshadow looks, and they're very intense. I find it difficult to achieve that type of look with this eyeshadow. Not bad, but not great. And then you have this deep navy matte eyeshadow right here in the corner, and this is where things get a little bit dicey because it is just so dark. I remember when I first reviewed this entire collection, I did my arm swatches and I mentioned that this was the only eyeshadow that applied kind of patchy. It didn't seem like it was going to be easy to blend. I knew I was going to have to play around with it, and I did several times, and I could not come up with a look that I was happy with, which is why I have never played with this on camera, at least not yet. Since then, I have kept experimenting. I recently did a look with this palette and I thought it came out really nice for a blue eyeshadow look. But I didn't use just this palette. I had to incorporate other things. What I finally had success with was laying down a base, and then I went in with the navy eyeshadow a little bit on the lid, focusing mostly on the outer V outer lid, and then I layered this on top. And I went in with my fingers, layer upon layer upon layer, until I built it up enough that it did give me that bright, shiny blue. It's nice, but man, she makes you work for it with this one. Palettes 5 and 6 are somewhat interchangeable, but I decided on this palette for 6 simply because it's not something that I'm going to grab often this time of year. This is the luxury palette of Pops, the Celestial Eyes. So this came out last holiday season, and I had so much fun with this palette. I think I loved it so much I picked up the Pillow Talk palette of Pops. One came before the other, but I just fell in love with this idea of the entire palette being pop shades that I picked up both of them, and I will probably pick up all of the palette of Pops in the future because I love these shimmery eyeshadows. Now you do typically have to pull in other palettes, other shadows. I really don't mind that as much with these palettes, and you don't have to. I have created complete looks using just palette of Pops, and I thought it turned out really great. Of course, that was closer to the holidays when it's perfectly acceptable to walk around with shimmer and sparkle all over your eyes, falling down on your cheeks, just shimmer everywhere, and nobody bats an eye. It's not going to be an everyday palette. It's not really an office appropriate or work appropriate palette. You're not gonna pull out Palette of Pops to hop on your Zoom calls. I've retired this palette for now, but when things get closer to the holidays or we have reason to dress up and go out for date nights, dinners, special occasions again, sometime soon, it will happen, I'll be pulling out my shimmer. Probably now more than ever, I'm gonna appreciate creating looks with palettes like this because it's been so long. And of course you can use your fingers for all of them. You could also use a brush, especially for this deeper purple right here. This is the only one that isn't really a true pop shade. This to me is your depth in the outer crease color. It builds up a lot. This one is really intense. The other shades are perfect for just smearing all over your lid. And even though it's all shimmer, I find this so much easier than this super blue palette. Palette number 5 is Mesmerizing Maroon. And it's getting tricky to place these in order now because I love all of these palettes. And it's worth repeating that I'm ranking my personal collection, not the entire Charlotte Tilbury eyeshadow collection. So I do really like all of these palettes. I find that this isn't quite as versatile as I thought it would be. I don't grab this that often because this shade right here, this matte cranberry shade, it's beautiful, but it's pretty dark. You have to be so light-handed. And even when I go in with a fluffy brush and just kind of like tap, tap, tap really lightly, and I try to just, buff it in the crease as a transition, I end up with a smoky eye. Every single time it just gets really smoky, out of control, quickly. The top row has your 2 shimmer shades, and this shade right here looks pretty pedestrian, but the undertone is very unique. I was surprised by this eyeshadow. You'd think it would be the least interesting in the palette. This shade right here is really pretty, this shimmery cranberry. The pop shade is also stunning. You really have to build it up. I think this is so sheer. And then you have the cranberry matte, stunning, really easy to blend, easy to work with, very smooth compared to the super blue. But it's just a little bit too dark for every day, in my opinion. On some people, this might be perfect. I do think you can create complete looks with this palette, so I would recommend it. If these are your tones that you like to live in, you're going to be obsessed with this. Palette number 4 is somewhat polarizing. I think I was one of the few people that I saw on YouTube who liked it, but it is the Luxury Palette of Pops, the Pillow Talk Pops. I received a couple comments from people who were like, how dare you say this is a good palette? But I really like it. I can only speak for myself, my experience. I had so much fun with this palette. I was creating all of the looks that I saw from the Instagram page, getting tons of inspiration. I don't grab this often, I haven't picked this up in a while, but I think it's really good. I think it's a really fun palette, and I'm so happy that this isn't limited edition. As far as I know, this is now permanent. It's so pretty. All pop shades, but they're all neutrals, so it's, in a lot of ways, a lot easier to create with this than it would be with this palette. Let me show you both of them. So this palette, I think, lends itself nicely to spring, summer looks, even though it's all sparkle. Whereas this palette, I guess maybe it's the gold and the pink and the purple, really makes me think of holiday and holiday only. Maybe fall. I guess this would be fall, winter, special occasion. And this is kind of seasonless because they're neutral. You have this really pretty cream, the gorgeous pink. Those look really nice on the lid. This color right here is the Dark Horse favorite. It's so pretty. You don't think it's going to look like much, but it's stunning on the eye. It has this nice kind of warm, burnt orangey brown copper undertone. It is so pretty. And then this shade right here gives you depth and dimension, but this one is more of a true pop. So it's a lot of shimmer all over the eyes. If you can handle it, if you like that appearance, you're gonna have so much fun with this palette. I never fixed it, but when my palette first arrived, I could hear it rattling, and then sure enough, the little eyeshadow popped right out. And I always have said that I'm going to fix it. Just dab a little glue in there. It would be so fast and easy. I just haven't gotten around to it yet. It's not top of my priority list, that's for sure. If you have blue eyes, green eyes, this palette is going to be really pretty. And of course you have to like shimmer. So personal preference, this isn't going to work for a lot of people. It's certainly not a wearable everyday palette, but it's so much fun. We've reached the top 3. Next I have Copper Charge. This also came out with that Color Series collection. The only palette that I didn't pick up from that series was the green, simply because I never grab for greens. I never feel inspired to grab greens. Perhaps I should play around with greens a little bit more, but I just had to limit myself, so I picked up the 3, and this has been hands down my favorite. I use this constantly, and it's one of the palettes that I would recommend to anybody who's looking for that easy, everyday go-to palette. I think this would be perfect for travel. It's all you need. This color right here, it's not too light, it's not too dark. It's kind of perfect in the middle, kind of like a medium intensity brown. So it works nicely because if you like a lot of depth, you can build it up, but if you want to be really light-handed, it can stay really soft. You know, it totally depends on you and what look you're going for. It's more of a pale, soft champagne gold, really pretty. And then over here you have the shimmery copper, also really gorgeous. You could put either one of those all over the lid, buff that in the crease, and then you're done. And then you have the pop shade. This is the only eyeshadow in the palette that is somewhat disappointing, and I'm not usually disappointed by the pops. Like, I think the pop shade in all of the other palettes is like one of the best, most exciting shades. But this one, I just feel like I really have to rub with my finger, like dig in there, and then I still barely get any color payoff. It's beautiful, and it just adds soft gold flecks. You know, if you put that on top of the lid and then you try to pop that on top of the eyeshadow, you're really not going to see it that much. It doesn't really stand out. It doesn't pop, which is kind of ironic, I guess. So it adds maybe a little sparkle that someone could see if they were standing this close to you, but it's not going to give you like a very intense, wild in your face pop of gold. You can be on autopilot with this palette and you will still come up with something really good. And I know that's important to have, especially for working moms, anybody who's working from home, but they still have, you know, conference calls that they have to hop on. You just want something really easy, simple, but flattering. This is the perfect palette for that. It was a bit of a toss-up between 2 and 3, but I decided to rank this palette higher because there is some tone variation. So this is the luxury palette Pillow Talk. When this first launched, I thought it was so underwhelming, not that interesting. I can skip that. Well, this was sent to me complimentary a couple months ago from Charlotte Tilbury when they launched the entire Pillow Talk collection, and now I am obsessed with this palette. I think it is so perfect, so beautiful, and I think I just like this color scheme a little bit better than Copper Charge. They're both really nice, easy, versatile, everyday palettes. You certainly wouldn't need both of them unless you wanted both. But I don't know. There's just something about these shades. I think they're really flattering. This one is all copper. This one you have the brown, but then you also have this pink. Kind of have this rose gold, and then you have the cream. At first I wasn't convinced there was that big of a difference between these two eyeshadows, but when you actually apply them to the lid, you can see that there is a huge difference. I also think it's underwhelming to swatch. I remember the first time I swatched this, I was like, this palette is so basic, but it's beautiful. It's far more than basic, and sometimes basic makeup is the best because they are the products that you can rely on. You can count on them, you can pull them out in a pinch, you can take them with you on the road. You know, this is not that huge to pack with you. If you're traveling somewhere, you can throw this in a makeup bag. But I just really love these colors and the entire concept of Pillow Talk. It's meant to be kind of universally flattering, and I think this palette is. I think this would look really pretty on brown eyes. I think this would be really pretty popped right on top of the lid. I think it would be beautiful on green eyes, hazel eyes, blue eyes. This palette far surpassed my expectations, that's for sure, and now it's one of my favorite palettes in my entire makeup collection. My #1 palette should come as no surprise. I feel like I've done a pretty good job not talking about it for a while because when I first picked this up, I talked about it non-stop. It is what I'm wearing on my eyes today, and this is the Pillow Talk Instant Eye Palette. It's the 12 pan palette, and if you were to choose just one palette from Charlotte Tilbury to pick up, I would have to recommend this. It is really versatile. You have kind of shimmer shades, you have matte shades, you have a pretty nice spectrum. I know you do have the pinks down here in the Dream section, and this is a turnoff for some people that don't really like pinks or cranberries. I don't know, I feel like even if you don't love pink eyeshadow, you can probably still play in these two metallic shades as long as you incorporate more of the neutrals. This would be the one shadow that you would probably skip. But at $75 for 12 shadows, it's much better value than $53 for the little quad. To me personally, what sets Charlotte Tilbury apart from other brands is how she simplifies the makeup application process. Of course, if you are a makeup artist or makeup enthusiast, if you watch tons of YouTube tutorials, you're gonna see this palette and know exactly what to do with it. But I know from my experience working in store that there are plenty of people out there who are still new with makeup. They're not entirely sure what to do, or they're less confident. I love how she breaks this down. You have your day trio, the desk trio, all mattes. You have a date trio, again, all mattes. And then you have Dream. She gives you range. She gives you so many options. She tells you exactly what colors to choose. And a lot of people are going to look at this and appreciate the fact that she has done it in such a simplified way. Before this palette, I rarely ever purchased any large eyeshadow palettes. I really just stuck to quads and quints. I thought they were wasteful. I didn't see the point. I never wanted to collect large palettes. In my head, I would never use them. But this palette changed my mind. In fact, I fell in love with it so much that I picked up the Natasha Denona Love Story palette, I picked up the Pat McGrath palette, and suddenly my eyes are open and I'm realizing that some big palettes are worth purchasing. It's not a waste. And no, I will probably not get through all of these eyeshadows. I might not hit pan on every single one down the line, but I have already got so much use out of this palette. I enjoy working with this palette. It makes my makeup application easier. You know, it makes my makeup routine faster. And if I had to choose one eyeshadow palette to keep, full stop, from any brand, I think it would probably be this one. It would be very difficult to change my mind. And when I play around with this palette, I might start here, definitely go here for the crease, maybe this. Sometimes I like to go into this one, and they're all high quality. Mattes, shimmers, all of them. Incredibly easy to work with. Very little, if any, fallout. Every single time I've used this palette just blows me away. See, look at that. I created my own quad. I think that would be really pretty. And that completes today's video. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed it and it was helpful to hear my thoughts. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. Leave me your comments, questions down below. If you have any favorite palettes that were not mentioned, definitely drop me a comment because I would love to hear your recommendations. As always, I will be linking everything mentioned, everything on my face, down below in the description box for your convenience. And for more videos like this, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell.